Soundstripe.
Welcome in, everybody, to the NFL Week 9 preview show with Uncle Phil and Smooth Andy. Thanks, everyone, for joining us this Tuesday evening. Uncle Phil, Smooth Andy, how are you guys doing?
Man, outstanding. Really pumped up. I've been telling everybody for 4 weeks I was seeing NFL really well. Culminated this past weekend in a 10-1 notebook play. Man, just happy for people who followed. Obviously, bonus pick, public plays. Those things are rocking. I think I'm 18-6 in my last public plays for NFL. So, man, I'm excited about Week 9. Smooth Andy, what about yourself, man?
Yeah, got off the schneid a little bit. I think I went exactly 500 this week, which is an improvement over the previous 2 weeks. So I'm good.
Fantastic. As we get into Week 9, again, something I've been tracking a little bit. The underdogs at 5 points more. We talked about those for the past several weeks now. This may be the last week I kind of put it to bed as they've kind of about evened out. Started out it was over 80%, and it dropped to 78%, then went to 71% as far as the underdogs of 5 or more that are covering. They went going into Week 8, they were at 64%, dropped well below 60% this past week with the underdogs of 5 or more not covering at all. So again, kind of reversion back. You kind of see those things. If you spot some of these outlying trends like that, it's a great opportunity for you as the betting public to really track those statistics and kind of bet against those trends, because those trends will go back to normal, and it's a great opportunity strategically to use. If you don't have the time to fundamentally handicap like I do, you can look for some of those outlying trends that kind of reverse some things. Andy, you've been around long enough. I'm sure you're not surprised to see that trend reverse.
Right. Yeah. Things tend to revert to the mean, but that's it. It's difficult when the dogs are all hitting to just start hitting favorites, expecting it to happen that week or anything. That's the problem. Knowing when it'll turn, if it will. Sometimes it doesn't turn at all, and it goes 50-50 the rest of the year, and it ends up being pretty lopsided. But it's you just gotta go with what you do and stick with it. So
yeah, kind of like the Warren Buffett approach when it comes to stocks: be greedy when others are fearful, and fearful when others are greedy. Whenever it's kind of your principle, it's been our principle. It's like whatever the public's doing, try to do the opposite. You'll typically be on the right side, and you always be on one side of Vegas. Interesting, just kind of recap the weekend. The sides went a tidy 8-8, 8 favorites, 8 underdogs covered. Totals, though, were very interesting. Now, as the season's wearing on, The teams have films of the defenses. The offenses have caught up. They're catching on. The totals. I know it's not something you play much, Andy, but man, the totals were right for the picking this past weekend. Totals went. The over went 12-4 this past weekend. It was great opportunity, because there's some lines that could have gone either way. People struggled on those. I talked to everybody on Sunday that, look, if you're struggling playing some underdogs this weekend, look at some totals. There were certainly opportunities there. I took advantage of those. Those worked in my favor. Hopefully they worked in some of yours as well. Getting kind of into the teams this weekend, I mean, look, the AFC race, it just kind of seems like it's old as new again, and that's Kansas City. Kansas City seems like they're the team to beat. I know you've been on this train even when I've drifted off of it. I've been going to Baltimore, and you stayed faithful to Kansas City. What is it about the Kansas City that has kept you on this train?
Well, I haven't been betting them per se. In fact, I was against.
But you've been steadfast in your support that, hey, they're the best team in the AFC, and they're gonna be in the Super Bowl, and you've been unwavering in your support. What kept you there despite some of their kind of lackluster, un-Kansas City-like wins?
Well, because they were just like this last year, and they still won the Super Bowl. A couple of years ago, they were putting up 40 points a game, but last year was the same thing. It was the defense just being clutch when it mattered. And Patrick Mahomes, I think, is tied for the lead in interceptions this year. Not that I'm looking to trade him or anything anytime soon. But they're plowing forward, even though they have some shortcomings in terms of losing Hollywood Brown and Rashee Rice, and Kelsey until this past weekend didn't have much of a season going on, but they just managed to scratch it out. They're experienced. They've been in big games for a long time, and they're continuing to just plow forward with an undefeated season. That's not a dominant season, but it's undefeated. So that's just they win ugly now. So
totally agree. So we're in unison on Kansas City being our AFC pick right now. I am unwavering in my support now. Love to see Kansas City make some moves at the trade deadline. It's funny. Other teams who desperately need players, you see Dallas, you see Cincinnati. Those organizations can't seem to find money. Kansas City, Buffalo, Baltimore, those organizations really well run. Those teams seem to find money, seems to really support their fan base, really kind of go all in to see what they're doing. Kansas City, again, made some moves. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But going to NFC, I'm all in on Detroit on the NFC as far as that's the match for Kansas City in the NFC when it comes to the bowl. Any thoughts or any objections to that?
No, in fact, that's who I would pick right now too. So yeah, right on board.
Just see what do you see a matchup between Kansas City and Detroit in Super Bowl? How do you see that one potentially playing out?
I don't know. It's hard to say, but I think it would. I think Kansas City would be favored, not just because of the records and stuff like that, but just the experience. I mean, Detroit's been in the playoffs, but they haven't been in a Super Bowl yet. Right. I'm not saying either team will make the Super Bowl. I'm not sure. I mean, they got to make it through, but it'll be the first time for Detroit, and it'll be the fifth time in 6 or 7 years for Kansas City's team. So, they lost that one against Tom Brady's Tampa, and then they've won 3 others. Pardon me. So I think that is definitely an advantage. Doesn't mean they'll win it. It just means they probably have a better idea what they're getting into, and that's always an advantage, I think.
Yeah. 100% agree. Well, look, as we kind of turn our attention to week 9, it's kind of an unusual week because it's stuck right here in the middle where we didn't have any teams on a bye this past week. You'll tell us who's on a bye coming up in week 9, but we're kind of turning the corner. We don't have teams going on a bye, so we don't have that advantage in handicapping this week, and we're looking at teams. It's interesting to me that something I'm tracking this year is teams off a bye. How are they doing? And what the record is. Teams so far off of a bye looks like they are 5-5 straight up. 10 teams have been on a bye, and they're 3-7 against the spread. Is that surprising to you? Because we're kind of always used to like, hey, if you're coming off the bye, you've got this extra rest, and you bet the team because they're off the bye. But right now, they've got a 30% cover rate.
Yeah, that's not, in my opinion, statistically significant. I think it's too small.
It's too early right now because the teams, so those teams got an early bye. We just didn't get enough of. They didn't get enough, the teams in the middle or the end of the season get to bye. Those teams come back and really need it the most, and those teams will benefit. What do you think? There's some truth to that? Do you think it'll shift?
I think maybe. I used to track that, and I don't remember there being anything significant to follow. Yeah. I think it does help to get rest, of course, but there's also that thing about you're going to get some time off and get to go vacation a little or something, because they're not going to just practice for 2 solid weeks. They're going to get some time off, and that's good for them, but at the same time, sometimes a little more time off can make you unfocus a little bit. I think it helps to have a veteran coach if you're coming off a bye. Famously, Andy Reid's coming off a bye thing. If you got same thing going to Europe. If you've got a veteran coach who's done it before, they kind of, a lot of the 10%, 15% of the annoying things that happen when you have to go over there get taken care of by somebody who's experienced in bringing a team over there and making sure everything's done right. So I guess I would probably, if I were going to try to look for an advantage with the bye, I'd try to look for coaches who are inexperienced doing that, even if they were an assistant when their team, has gone on a bye and they've seen it done before. But still, I think it helps a lot to have done it before.
Yeah, totally agree. One last thing, as we turn to Thursday night's game, which brings us to an AFC East team that we'll be seeing again on Thursday night. I call it kind of the AFC least. Buffalo is a record of 6-2. The other 3 teams in the division, Miami, New England, and the Jets, have a combined wins of 6. So kind of an ugly-looking division. But with that said, let's get into Thursday night. You're muted.
Sorry, the dogs are barking. My bad.
That's all right.
Houston Texans at New York Jets. Houston's 6-2, coming off a win over Indianapolis, 23-20. Jets 2-6, coming off a loss to New England, 25-22.
Yeah. Look, the way I've kind of phrased this game is a legit playoff team versus a fraud, right? That's really what it is. Houston's a little banged up right now at the wide receiver position. We'll talk about that, but really is weather on this one. No real weather this week. Weather's kind of reversed. We don't have any weather in the 50s this week. Everything's in the 60s and above. But this one's 72 to start off November. 18% chance of showers at MetLife Field, and winds southwest 9 miles per hour. I've guessed this one as Houston -1.5 and a total at 45.
You said 45 and the total opened 42.5. It's down to 42. You said Houston 1.5. I said Houston 2.5. It opened Jets 1.5, and it's Jets 2 now.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't understand what the Jets have. I know they're the home team, but I don't understand what the Jets have done to be a favorite against a 6-2 team right now. But
well, look, I think it's probably again the New York money. I mean, it's a New York team that people still believe that Aaron Rodgers can turn back the clock of time, and I'm just here to tell you that time has passed him by. Also, Houston's got some pretty significant injuries. Obviously, you have got
Nico Collins.
Well, you've got Stephon Diggs that just out for ACL. He's done for the year.
Yep.
And Nico Collins, as you were just saying, he's eligible to come off the injured reserve week 10. So it'll be a couple weeks from now, not this week, but next, but doesn't help them this week. Obviously, they're going to have Tank Bell step up. Going to be a really interesting deal of how that can go. These teams, there's nothing real significant about it. Houston's 3-5 against the spread, and the Jets are 2-8. So not really either one of them a really good cover team from that perspective. It really will just kind of come down to matchups. Could be a kind of an ugly game. Any way that you see this one?
Well, I think the wrong team's favored, so that's a sign in itself. Who knows? Maybe I'll be on Houston at the end of the on Thursday and watch Aaron Rodgers rediscover himself in the inverse way that Geno Smith undiscovered himself this past week. So I don't know, but on the surface, I think Houston should be favored, and I think getting points and the fact that the spread's gone from 1.5 to 2 makes me feel pretty good about that. Yeah.
See, I'm with you. I mean, clearly it feels like the wrong team's favored in this game. Should be Houston favored. It feels to me a lot less like the Rams in Minnesota last week. It feels more like UCF and BYU, where UCF was favored, and we all knew that BYU was a better team, and of course, it was like, oh, it's got to be UCF. I mean, to me, this one just doesn't seem like an overthink it. To me, it seems like Houston. I mean, they are going to get pressure on Rodgers. This is not going to be a good matchup for him. We'll see. But we'll see what the Jets defense can do. The interior line of Houston is just absolutely terrible. The Jets are strong in the interior line, but the Jets defense, since Robert Saleh was unceremoniously escorted out of the building, has not been good. I mean, it's been bad. So I'm not sure. I mean, it seems like an under deal to me to probably look at the under, but at the same time, the Jets, since they've gotten Robert Saleh out of the building, have all 3 games have gone over the total for the Jets. So, I don't know. It's a little bit of a mixed bag for me. In a lot of different ways, I can certainly see all sides of this one, but interesting game nonetheless. Any final thoughts before we move on?
No, I'm good. That's I'm going to be stewing on that one later.
Yeah, same here.
Okay. Next game is the first of the 1 o'clocks. It is Dallas 3-4 at Atlanta 5-3. Dallas coming off a loss to San Francisco 30-24, and Atlanta coming off the win over Tampa Bay 31-26.
Yeah, obviously this one's in a dome, so no weather on this one. My guess on this one is Atlanta -1.5. I'm really excited to hear this line. Atlanta -1.5, and I've got a total of 49.
Okay. You said 49. It opened 50.5. It's 52.5 now, so it's going up.
Not surprised.
You said Atlanta 1.5. I said Atlanta 4.5. I thought they deserved more than just the home field advantage, but it ended up opening at 2.5, and it's still 2.5.
2.5. Okay. Yeah. Seems about right. I was kind of wishful thinking on the 49. Certainly these two teams, Dallas doesn't have a really good defense. Atlanta has a good back-end defense, but they just can't get any pressure. Atlanta leads in the worst possible way. They are the worst in the NFL at getting pressure. They only have 6 sacks the entire year as a team. Baker Mayfield dropped back 50 times against this Atlanta defense, and he was just searching for people, and they had 0 sacks against Baker Mayfield and 50 dropbacks. So just not a really good defense. So certainly, you could see a lot of points scored in this game. Should be quite the shootout. I think it'll live up to that billing, but certainly at 52.5, that's certainly pressing it. Interesting, as far as I can't say that Dallas is a really good team. All they've beaten is Cleveland, the Giants, and Pittsburgh. I can say that, after the past 2 weeks, everybody's very high on Pittsburgh. But Pittsburgh, in the past couple of weeks, has beaten the Jets and the Giants, who don't look like Giants at all, look like bad teams. So, I realize there's a lot of hype on Russell Wilson right now. But, again, trying to take in context of who they're playing, I just don't think he's really been tested against a defense that's going to test him yet. Atlanta has made its living in the NFC South by beating New Orleans, Tampa Bay, Carolina, and Tampa Bay again, and also Philadelphia at the start of the season right after the loss to Pittsburgh. So not sure them as well. I think they're a little bit of a paper tiger, and certainly flawed. But interesting stat about Dallas. Again, I tried to tell everybody again, Dallas is just poorly constructed from a rushing ability. Dallas had 46 total yards rushing the ball. Dak has a losing record when they don't rush over 100 yards. Brock Purdy, Sunday night, Brock Purdy had 56 yards. The entire Dallas Cowboy team had 56 yards rushing in that game. So, again, just lots of stats. Just not. How do you see this game playing out?
Honestly, I don't know. I think both these teams are. I mean, Dallas is kind of obviously a fraud at this point, like compared to what there was expected of them this year.
Yep.
I think Atlanta at 5-3 is probably overrated. That record's probably better than they've been. So I could see Dallas win by 20. I could see Atlanta win by 20.
Yeah. Look, I feel pretty strongly about this game in some ways. I certainly see an angle on it. This will probably be one of my notebook picks, so I will. I'll stay out of it, but I like that game a lot. I'll just go ahead and say that. Let's move on to the next.
Okay, next game is Washington 6-2 at the New York Giants 2-6. Washington having beaten Chicago 18-15 with that Hail Mary, and the Giants losing to Pittsburgh 26-18 on Monday night.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, look. This is kind of the path less traveled, I think. Washington took the hard road. They took, let's switch out ownership. Let's switch out the coaching staff. Let's do everything. Let's switch out quarterback. Let's take the big swing, and look how it's paid off. I'm not advocating for a coaching change with the Giants because I think Daboll would be employed for every bit of about 5 minutes. But, Mara doesn't look like a great owner. Joe Shane doesn't look like a great GM. And certainly Daniel Jones, after that game last night, if you weren't out on Daniel Jones before last night, you should be after today. I mean, that was just a really, especially that last pass through interception, it was really emblematic of his career, just not very great. The weather on this one, again, 59, not terrible, 3% chance of rain, southwest winds 5 miles per hour. It's nothing again for November. You are getting, it's kind of a gift. If that switches in November, I'm sure it will, but the weather just not really a factor this week. Not wind or anything. A little bit of rain on Monday night in Kansas City, but we'll get to that. My guess on this one is that I'm going to say the Commanders are favored by 6.5, and I'll put a total at 41.5.
Yeah, you said 41.5 on the total, open 43.5. It's still there. You said 6.5 on Washington. I said 3.5. It opened 3.5. It's still 3.5.
Wow.
Well,
Okay.
It's you flip it and 3.5 becomes 9.5. That's a pretty big number for if it was in Washington.
Yep. No, I agree. I just thought this one might be a little bit more lopsided than that one.
Washington should be 5-3 if it weren't for that Hail Mary. It would look less impressive in that respect. But
yeah,
part of it.
Commanders 6-2 against the spread. The Giants have lived up to their billing. They're 2-5-1 against the spread. Looking at the games though, look at Washington. Who they beat. They've already beat the Giants once, right? At Washington. They beat Cincinnati, who's clearly struggling on defense. They beat Arizona, back before Kyler Murray was, that whole team was kind of playing well. Cleveland with Deshaun Watson, Carolina, Chicago, obviously very recently. The Giants have pretty much lost everybody, beat Cleveland, beat Seattle, which was oddly enough probably their best defensive performance in the entire year, and just haven't played as well since then. I think this Commanders team as well as anybody. What are your thoughts on them? Are they, they're, if you look at their offense, their offense had 481 total yards against the Bears, and the Bears have the number 2 defense in the NFL. Most yards the Bears have given up before then was 322 yards. Jaden Daniels' QBR was 71, which again was the best against the Bears defense all season. And, again, their offense, one of the things that they're doing really well is they only have 3 giveaways this entire year on offense. Nobody else is even close to that. That's best in the NFL. And their defense under Dan Quinn, that was so suspect and everything, they've only given up 15 points one time in the past 5 games. Or more than 15 points. So interesting deal. Daniel Jones has a 46 total QBR. It's not Anthony Richardson bad, but it's 25th in the league. So not great there either. Again, this Commanders team as well as anybody. What are your thoughts on them? You're muted.
Sorry, dogs went nuts again.
Yep,
I think they're slightly above average right now. As you pointed out, the teams they've beaten haven't been that impressive. They should have lost this past week, but they got lucky on a Hail Mary. I think Jaden Daniels is the real deal. He is a little banged up with the ribs right now, and he was a little like they couldn't run him as much in this past game. But I'm thinking 10-7 kind of maybe for them. I know 6-2 projects better.
Do they win the NFC East?
Well, a wild card team, in my opinion, is slightly above average, which is what I just called them. But I mean, maybe a little bit better than that. It'll depend on them in Philadelphia. I'm not sure I believe in Philly either. They seem to be winning again, but still not. Well, they had a nice win this weekend. Not sure they're back either. I don't know. We'll see. I think when they go head to head, that'll show something. Dallas as well is in the mix. I don't think the Giants are, so we'll see. There's a lot of divisional play to happen in that division to kind of sort this stuff out, and we haven't gotten there yet.
100%. We'll let that be the last word. Moving on.
All right, next game is Miami 2-5 at Buffalo 6-2. Miami coming off the loss to Arizona 28-27, and Buffalo coming off a win over Seattle 31-10.
Yeah. My one thing about this game is new Tua, same Dolphins. Again, I said it on Sunday. You weren't here. You were traveling. But I'm like, look, everybody was hyped about Miami, and I was very cautious on them on Sunday just because I didn't think Miami was a good team when they had Tua before. And again, they just showed that again. Obviously, they increased their points per game, but again, just not a great team overall. Not as impressed with them. Buffalo, on the other hand, is coming on, but again, this is who Buffalo beats. Buffalo beats teams that are 500 or below, and they beat them like a dog. The teams that are really good, they've struggled with. My guess on this one is Buffalo 8.5, and I'll put 47 as a total.
Okay. Said 47 on the total. It opened 48.5. It's up to 50.
Yeah.
You said Buffalo 8.5. I said Buffalo 9. It opened 6, and it's still 6.
Still 6. Okay. All right. The key to Tua, again, as it has been last year, we talked about this even last year, was that when Tua can get the ball out of his hands quick, and that means 2.5 seconds and under. Right now, he's at about 88% completion percentage. When he holds the ball longer than 2.5 seconds, his completion percentage drops to about 50%. That's really the key. And can you cut that off? Against Arizona, it's one of the things I talked about. Somebody asked me a fantasy football questions on Sunday about Tua, and they're like, hey, should I start Tua or Daniels? It's like Tua, because the Cardinals are terrible at covering that line of scrimmage to about 15, 20 yards out, that quick crossing pattern that Tua likes to run with his wide receivers. That was a great one. That's what he did feasted against them. Just not sure that he'll do that against Buffalo. He certainly didn't have a good time when they played earlier in the year. I'm not sure about it. Things I like about Buffalo, I like Keon Coleman getting better, starting to really click for him. You can see the light coming on. I mean, he's, in college, you probably got 10 yards between your next guy, and then you can jump higher. You can out athlete everybody. It's a little different in the NFL. If you've got about a foot of separation, then you're open. And he's learning to contest that and kind of coming into his own. I really like that about him. And I really like Buffalo's offensive line. They're not giving up any sacks, and they're allowing their offense to kind of dictate things there. Josh Allen is really able to kind of do what he wants to, and seems like a good thing. Any thoughts on this game or either one of these teams?
I'm not sure that I know who Miami is right yet because of Tua being out. It's his first game back was last week, and they lost by 1 point. But I think they kind of remind me a little bit of Dallas in that they were really good last year, and they're struggling this year. And I think they're, if Tua had been quarterback for all these weeks, I think they would be in a better situation than they're in right now. So that might be part of the thing. But being 2-5, they got to be a little bit desperate at this point. And Buffalo really could not look much better than they did against Seattle last week. I had Seattle in the points last week, and they got just curb stomped it from the start. So we'll see if your theory about Buffalo beating up on weak teams is right or not. Miami at the moment is considered would be viewed a weak team at 2-5. So I'm not really sure. I think you and I are both a little surprised the line was not higher with Buffalo at home. But it is a division game, so we'll see.
No question. But just for reference, Miami's beaten Jacksonville and New England, and that's it. So not really great. They've lost to Buffalo, Seattle, Tennessee, Indianapolis, Arizona. Buffalo, on the other hand, has lost to Baltimore and Houston, playoff teams. They've beaten Arizona, Miami, Jacksonville, the Jets, and Seattle. And Seattle's not a playoff team to me. I don't think they're that good. I think Geno Smith, it looks like he's fallen off. That offensive line just can't be sustainable. So we'll see how it goes, but I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Next game is Las Vegas 2-6 at Cincinnati 3-5. Vegas coming off a loss to Kansas City 27-20, where they covered. Cincinnati coming off a loss to Philadelphia 37-17, where they didn't.
Yeah, it really interesting game to me. I mean, to me, I've got it. Is that this is Cincinnati's last stand? I mean, really, their last stand at 3-5. They've got to win 7 out of their last 9 to get to 10 wins to become a playoff team, to kind of lock up a playoff team. The AFC's not that great this year. Maybe they can get one at 9 games, but they really need to win 7 of the last 9. And I'm not sure that defense can. I mean, but this is really their last stand. They can't afford. They've got some really winnable games on the schedule, but it's got to start now. I've got some pretty strong feelings about Cincinnati and their organization as a whole. I'll do a walk and talk tomorrow, and where I do every week, where I do where Uncle Phil was right, where Uncle Phil was wrong, and I'll post that. And I've got some thoughts about Cincinnati, some pretty strong takes. I don't think you want to miss that. But the game time temperature on this is 68, 35% chance of rain. Southwest winds 6 miles per hour, so nothing big on this one. I've got Cincinnati at 3.5, and I've got 43.5 as a total.
Okay. Total, you said 43.5, open 45. It's up to 46.5. You said Cincinnati 3.5. I said Cincinnati 6. It opens 7.5, and it's still 7.5.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm not sure. There's some teams here getting a lot of respect that I'm not sure they deserve. And the Jets are one of them, and Cincinnati's another, and I think Dallas actually is the third one. But there we are.
Yeah, both teams are 4-4 against the spread. Las Vegas, since they shipped Devontae Adams to the Jets, have actually covered the spread 2 in a row. Maybe that was a good thing for them and how they're doing. Again, just not concerned. I mean, really concerned about Cincinnati as a team. Concerned for Joe Burrow. Cincinnati's got a bad defense, and they've moved off some key pieces in the offense, specifically Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon made this team better without him. Just you move off Jesse Bates, you move off Joe Mixon. None of that makes sense. Can't be very encouraging, Joe Burrow. Any thoughts on this game for you?
That number seems a little high. If it stays above 7, I'll probably be on Vegas. If it gets down to 7, I might be on Vegas, and 6.5 might be a bridge too far. That's kind of where I am on this one.
Yeah, Cincinnati's not exactly blowing people out, so I understand what you're saying.
Yep.
Okay.
Next game is LA Chargers 4-3 at Cleveland 2-6. Chargers coming off a win over New Orleans 26-8. Cleveland coming off a win over Baltimore 29-24.
Wow, two teams winning and doing it. This is really the battle of the defenses, right? I mean, this is what these two teams, their calling card is. Jim Harbaugh building this team the way it is. You actually got to see the defense and pay attention to how dominant their defense was against Baltimore. Obviously, I won on Sunday. The people that followed me on this, even had a little bit on the money line on Cleveland. I felt very strongly about Cleveland beating Baltimore. It was really the spark that they needed. This was a good Cleveland team. They were just missing the quarterback, just wasn't even close. This one again stayed in the 60s, 60-degree weather, 51% chance of rain, southeast wind, 8 miles per hour. Again, that's basically a summer day in Cleveland, right? I mean, those people there are tough. That's not even a big deal for them. My guess on this one is I've got Cleveland favored by 1.5, and I've got a total of 39.
Okay.
How bad am I off?
What's that?
I said, how bad am I off? Because I feel like I am.
Yeah, you're pretty far off. Total, you nailed it. It opened 39. It's up to 42.5 now. Cleveland, you said -1.5. I said Chargers -4. It opened Chargers 2.5. It's down to 2. So I mean, through the zero, not terrible, but still wrong team favorite, I guess. But yeah, I think that seems about right. Even though I guessed 4, 2.5 seems okay too.
Yeah. You have a preference on who you think the better defense is? Kind of an interesting question, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd have to look into it more. It's all a perception thing, but
yeah.
My perception is that the Chargers have the better offense. But that said, Jameis came out and played a pretty good game last week. So with a better quarterback, it's possible Cleveland might be more competitive now. It's just hard to say with one game sample size that he's going to be able to do that every week, because Jameis is famously kind of, he'll go out and throw 4 touchdowns and 3 interceptions almost every week, and a lot of times those interceptions are killers. But he did pretty well. He did really well last week. He had a great game. So we'll see if he can sustain it. That's what I'm not really sure about.
He did, but Baltimore, to your point, in fairness, they dropped 3 interceptions. I mean, and one massive one by Kyle Hamilton at the end of the game. So really interesting. Again, to toot Jameis Winston's horn and compare him to what this is the spark that Cleveland needed. He threw for 334 yards and 3 touchdowns on Sunday. Deshaun Watson in 19 starts with Cleveland has never thrown for 300 yards. Are you surprised at that? 19 starts, Deshaun Watson, never 300 yards.
Not really. He's been, he seems to be coming off injury and, disgrace every time he makes it back to the field. So, there's some rust and stuff like that. So I guess I'm a little surprised, but I think we can all say that since he came to Cleveland, he hasn't been the same quarterback. So it's not shocking to me to find out that he didn't put up the numbers either.
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, it feels like the whole thing with Houston, and when he had all those allegations that were settled for sexual assault were settled out of court. It was like, I don't know how many counts it was, but 20 or so more. That was kind of a Tiger Woods moment for him, where Tiger, ran the fire hydrant and then all that, with his wife found out about the porn star and all that. It's just, that was kind of his moment. Tiger was never really the same after that. It doesn't seem like Deshaun's recovered from that. To your point, he's never been the same Deshaun Watson ever since he's been to Cleveland. Certainly haven't got their money worth. Deshaun Watson, has the worst, as far as passes thrown down the field, 15 yards or more this season. Winston went 8 for 11. Deshaun Watson so far this season in his games that he did play was 9 of 37, which is worst in the NFL. So, again, just not the quarterback that that Cleveland thought they were getting. But it's interesting to see if Cleveland can go on a little bit of a run now because they've got a playoff defense. Can the offense make up any ground?
Right. Yep. I don't know. I don't know. I think it might be too late for Cleveland, even if Jameis starts, winning games for them. But we'll see. As for their defense, I still believe in it, and I think their defense is going to play better if they know their offense has their back a little bit. But it's hard to quantify how much.
Well, if they're going to get the playoffs or make a run, it's got to start this weekend at 2-6. You can't drop this one at home to the Chargers. We'll see what they do.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Well, I'm going to need to take a bio break, so I'm going to set up the next game and let you talk a bit while I do that. Sorry about that, but
no worries.
Next game is New England 2-6 at Tennessee 1-6. Good luck filling time with this game.
Yeah, thanks for leaving me with this.
I didn't look ahead too much when I did.
That's all right.
Although the next one's just actually worse. New England beat the Jets 25-22. Tennessee lost to Detroit 52-14. So hit it.
Yeah, thanks so much. Look, these two teams combined have a 3-12 record. My one thing about this team or this game was that, do we really have to watch this game? I mean, this is just a bad as we get, but we do if we want to bet on it. I have got. I'll just look it up right now myself. I have got a total on this game of 43, and I put Tennessee minus 2.5. And we'll see what it actually looks like here on to see if there's actually how far I am on this game. Let's see. Looks like it's actually Tennessee 3.5, and the total is 38, and I put 43. So I got my guess on this one was Tennessee 3 and 43. Looks like this one is 3.5 and 38. Is what I'm getting. Is that what you've got?
Yeah, open 2.5. It's up to 3.5. Open 37 up to 38.
Okay, fair enough. Again, will not feel like November in Nashville. Temperature 78. Mostly cloudy. Southwest winds or south winds at from 10 miles an hour. Again, not much. Not real great on this. New England's 3-5 against the spread. Tennessee's 1-6. Somebody's got to win, but as we dig in, we don't have to watch, but we can certainly bet on it if we see some action. Obviously, Drake May's in concussion protocol right now. Seriously doubt he clears by Sunday. That would be highly unusual. Probably looking at Jacoby Brissett starting for New England in this game. So, as bad as the score was against Detroit, I didn't think Mason Rudolph looked that bad on Sunday. What were your thoughts?
Well, I sent you the box score.
You
Detroit had, what was it, like 250 total yards, but they had a 4-0 turnover ratio in their favor. It was a really crazy. If you look at the stats, I mean, it looks like they got outplayed, and yet they still won by 38 points. So,
yeah, it was special teams. It was punt returns. It was kickoff returns. Just that was just brutal for them.
Yep. So I think they're better than a 1-6 team in general. I just think they have a pretty decent team. It's just not. It's not a playoff team. It's not even a 500 team. But it doesn't. They're 1-6 is a bit. I think that just looks worse than they really are. So.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I'm really interested in seeing is that last year, Arizona was a bad team, but you never saw them quit. You're always like, okay, well, that tells me that Shane Steichen is actually a good coach, because we talked about that last year, that Arizona never quit despite how bad their record was, and you saw them fight, through that one. Will Tennessee continue to fight here? I know the team itself, the locker room's out on Will Levis. As long as Mason Rudolph starts, it's probably But again, they're dealing off players. They just got rid of they've got rid of a couple players.
Nuke Hopkins and a safety.
Yeah. So typically when you see a white flag like that, something changes. But we'll see how they end up doing.
Okay. Next game, New Orleans 2-6 at Carolina 1-7. New Orleans coming off the loss to the Chargers 26-8. Carolina coming off the loss to Denver 28-14.
Okay. I am scrolling around trying to find that one on this because I'm seriously out of order with you tonight.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I used the ESPN the way they ordered them on ESPN. I usually use Don Best, but I got mixed up this week.
All good. Hey, this is I found it. This is the battle for the basement of the NFC South. Just kind of like we thought it would be, right? To start the season, everybody was, hey, New Orleans is great. Clint Kubiak. I haven't heard Clint Kubiak's name, the offensive coordinator for New Orleans, in about 6 weeks now. So 70-degree weather, partly cloudy, east winds 2 miles an hour. I've guessed this one, New Orleans. They put a beat down on them last time. I've got New Orleans 5.5, and I've got a total of 45.
Okay, total's very high. It opened 37, and it's up to 38. As for the number, you got way closer than I did. I know Carolina's trash, but it's the home team, divisional game. You said 5.5. I said 2.5 on New Orleans. It opened 6. It's up to 7. And I know with Bryce Young back there, if it were the Red Rifle, it'd probably be a different number. But I know it's really hard to bet on Carolina. That's a lot. I mean, New Orleans shouldn't be. I mean, if it was in New Orleans, that means it'd be 12 or 13. I don't think New Orleans is playing like they should be. 12 or 13 over anybody. That's my knee-jerk reaction to it.
Well, Carolina did get rid of one of their key pieces today. Deontay Johnson, trade him off to Baltimore. Could potentially factor in that number. Bryce Young did not look good at all against Denver. Looked like the team, and I don't think Denver is a great team, but they just routed Carolina. I mean, it's just a historically bad team. No team's really lighting it up against the spread. New Orleans is 3-5 against the spread. Carolina is a pitiful 1-7 against the spread. Obviously the 1-7 was the week that they won against the Raiders, and you had them money line in that game and won huge in that one. I always have to bring that up. Do you think they can win this game?
Yes. In a word, yes, they can. Will they? Probably not. But it's a question of whether they cover the spread. So we'll see.
I like how you're so definitive, and then you just backed right off of it.
I said they can win. I just didn't say I think they will. That's all.
No doubt about it.
That's why they're a 7-point dog right now, because Bryce Young is awful.
Do you see any reason to spend any more minutes on that game?
No.
Okay, let's move on.
All right, next one. Last of the 1:00 games. Denver 5-3 at Baltimore 5-3. Denver coming off the win over Carolina 28-14. Baltimore coming off a loss to Cleveland 29-24.
Okay. And it is Denver, and again, scrolling to find that. I clearly went through. There it is. Interesting enough, the battle of two second-place teams since Pittsburgh is the first team in the NFC North. Actually, I think they're tied. I think that's correct. Well, actually, no, that's not correct. It is. They are in second place to the Steelers. Steelers are alone in first place. Battle of second-place teams. Denver is the second-place team in the AFC West. They're the second-place team in the AFC North. 61 degrees, 5% chance of showers. Southeast winds 6 miles per hour. I've got this one at Baltimore -7.5 and a total of 45.
Okay, the total you said 45. It opened 43.5. It's at 45.5 now, so you kind of got right in there. You got it better than me on the number. I think I probably shot too low, but you said Baltimore 7.5. I said 6. It opened 8.5. It's up to 9.5. I don't believe in this Denver team either, but their defense kind of keeps them in games. I think Bo Nix is not terribly good, but he's very young, so it's hard to close the book on him or anything. But yeah, I probably should have been above a 7. So I think you were definitely right to be above the 7.
Bo Nix had the best offensive stats in about 5 different categories that were better than any other rookie quarterback in October. So certainly he's done well. Sean Payton's offense has done well. Denver's 5-2-1 against the spread. Baltimore is 5-3 against the spread. Both teams very good against the spread. It'll be an interesting game. In this one, I think it should be pretty interesting. In the month of October, again, Bo Nix had a 102.7 passer rating, 10 TDs, 1 interception in his last 5 games. So really has done well. I mean, I think there's some throws he leaves out on the field, but, it's okay to do that as long as you don't put it in harm's way, and he hasn't done that. So he's certainly being coached up. Certainly has the biggest advantage of the rookie quarterbacks. I think Jaden Daniels, has a big advantage having, an offensive.
Kingsbury, yeah.
And Kingsbury, I think he does a great job. But Sean Payton is just an offensive guy. It's one thing to have a head coach who's such an offensive guy like that with a proven track record that can coach like that. One thing I'm concerned about Jaden Daniels is that Cliff Kingsbury did really well at the first of the year with Kyler Murray. Teams kind of caught on to that offense later on in the year, didn't do so well at the end of the year. I hope that didn't happen to Jaden Daniels. Hopefully he can overcome that, but it's something that I'm keeping an eye on. Baltimore's pass defense this year is the issue. We both expressed in the preseason when we did our preseason predictions and covered each division, we were concerned about Baltimore, particularly on their defense, taking a step back without Mike McDonald there. And that's exactly what they've done. Passing yards per game last. Passing TDs given up tied for last. 15-plus air yard completions, dead last in the NFL. I saw some things. Zach Orr, the new defensive coordinator, I just didn't like what he did. Right up to the last 6 plays against Cleveland on Sunday, when right up, and the number 6 play was when Jameis hit that bomb for that touchdown to give them the final go-ahead score, which ended up being the final score. His defense became very predictable. The final 6 plays, he came out with he was in cover 0, which means an all-out blitz, and he did that 6 plays in a row, and it just came predictable at that point. You're looking at that. Ken Dorsey figured that out. It's like, okay, all we can do is got to block it up, and we've got everybody in man coverage. You're going to stay in that. We're going to burn you. And that's exactly what he did. And again, really disappointing, because the weakness of your team is that back end of that defense, and you left them all alone in an island, and you left them to cover Jameis Winston. And of course, he burned them. Just a beautiful pass there at the end. So was disappointed there. Got, obviously it's Cedric Tillman deep. But their offense was concerning to me against Cleveland. And again, we talked about how good Cleveland's defense, has been. Cleveland, but Baltimore against Cleveland, 40% of their snaps were for 0 or negative yards. 0 or negative yards. It was like, and again, they got they got away from play action, and which would have, given that defense something to think about as well. And they had the lowest percent of play action they'd had the entire year against that aggressive Cleveland defense. Felt like they could have done a better job in that. It made me think, again, have flashbacks of that game against Kansas City, where in the big moments against the big teams, that the coaching staff called a different game than they had been all year. Made me think that they're going to do it again in the playoffs. And that's why, because of that, it's why I switched my vote to Kansas City this time. I just I don't see it. It made me have serious questions and doubt about that. But again, they do some things really well, do some things really bad. Number 1 rush defense, number 32 pass defense, number 1 total offense, number 32 allowing the most plays of 20-plus yards. I don't really understand the trading for wide receiver Deontay Johnson. I know that their whole thing was like, hey, we want to go play more 11 personnel because we don't want teams to load up the box to stop the run. And I'm like, you're the number 1 rushing team in the entire NFL. Why are you trying to break what's not broken on offense? It's the defense where you need the help. But Deontay Johnson's great. He's a great man-to-man beater, and he's an excellent route runner. He'll help, but again, it doesn't seem like that's where their need are. What are your thoughts on Baltimore and on that trade itself?
Never been a big Deontay Johnson fan. He's not it's not like he's going to make him worse or anything, but I just never really been a big believer in him when he was at Pittsburgh or anywhere else. But so it'll help a little maybe, but Baltimore never really has great wide receivers anyway, so maybe it'll fit just right in with them. As for Baltimore, I think I don't remember all their losses this year, but they're 5-3 now. I think it's pretty clear they're not as good as they were last year to me. I just they look really good sometimes when they win, and you think, oh, okay, this is what I thought they'd be, and then they go out and do what they did last week. So I think they're more vulnerable to an early round playoff exit than they have been in previous years.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Exact same way. I've lost the very first 2 games, Kansas City, and then fold in the fourth quarter to the Raiders, up by 10 points, fold in the fourth quarter. Raiders beat them at home. Again. And again to Cleveland. So kind of a mix of what they've lost to. But let's look at who they've beaten. They've beaten Dallas. They've beaten Buffalo. They've beaten Cincinnati. They've beaten Washington. Beaten Tampa Bay. And Tampa Bay was when Mike Evans went out early. Obviously, Chris Godwin didn't get beaten until the end. But, I mean, Tampa Bay was moving the ball. Baker throws the ball in the end zone, turns it over. Could have been a lot closer game than it turned out to be if that weren't for that, interception in the end zone that Baker did. But again, just not convinced that they're as great as we once thought we were. Kind of dug into them after this weekend's game. It's kind of what I came up with. I'm on the same side as you.
Okay. Next game is the first of the 4 o'clock. The 4:05 games. There are 2 4:05s and 2 4:25s. The first game is Jacksonville 2-6 at Philadelphia 5-2. Jacksonville coming off a loss to Green Bay 30-27, and Philadelphia coming off a win over Cincinnati 37-17.
Yeah, look, I mean, my one thing about this game is I still call it the battle of the hot seat coaches, because I know Nick Sirianni has cooled off a little bit after the past couple of weeks. You've got your full complement of wide receivers, Jack. You've got Devontae Smith. You've got A.J. Brown back. They've changed their offense up. They're running more downhill. They're not doing a lot of those zone reads anymore. You're having Jalen Hurts run more than he passes. They certainly understand that. They've adapted. They've changed the offense, which is good for them. But make no mistake, Jeffrey Lurie is just waiting for a chance to fire Nick Sirianni. And if they start losing again, his seat's still warm. It hadn't cooled off yet. We'll see how they end up doing. I'm with you. I'm not sure that I'm completely sold on them, we'll see how they do. I'm encouraged, but I'm not sold on them. Weather 63 degrees, mostly cloudy. Southwest winds 2 miles per hour. My guess on this one is Philadelphia is a favorite in this one. I'll put 9.5, and I'll put a total of 47.5.
Okay, you said 47.5, open 48. It's down to 45.5. You said Philadelphia 9.5. I said 8. It opened 6.5. It's up to 7.5 now.
Wow. Surprising.
Yeah, it is.
You think that's because that Jacksonville kept it close against Green Bay?
No, I think it's because Philadelphia is still very suspect.
Yeah, I'm with you. Jacksonville's 3-4 against the spread. Philadelphia is only 4-3 against the spread. So we'll see. Obviously, Jacksonville, big loss. Kristen Kirk, broken collarbone, is out for the season. Jacksonville also, wide receiver Brian Thomas Jr. is day-to-day dealing with a contusion on his ribs. So that's certainly a big factor as well. Gives Trevor Lawrence less people to throw to. Again, looking at who Philadelphia's beat, they beat Green Bay, but that was first game of the season. That was in Brazil, that awful field. They beat New Orleans. They beat Deshaun Watson, Cleveland, barely. Didn't look impressive doing it. They beat up the Giants. Obviously, their left tackle was out first time, Andrew Thomas. With that, Cincinnati is just kind of bad defense. Looked bad. You kind of wonder if Cincinnati's kind of folding. I see somebody in our comments talking about Zach Taylor. He has been on my list this entire year. I'm tired of seeing the dumb look on his face every time they show him on TV when something bad happens. It's like he's got this shock face where he just is like looking at the camera, and he is just not doesn't look like he's there and all with it. So I'm not convinced that Zach Taylor is the guy, but I don't think the organization's organization. I think the organization again is failing Joe Burrow. I mean, it feels like they are because I think that Cincinnati's got a lot of talent. They just kind of sold it off. Not going to get into that. So again, I'm not as convinced that was. Give Jalen Hurts credit. I thought he was exceptional against Cincinnati, but I'm not convinced like you that the Eagles are there. But also give some props to Evan Ingram. I feel like Evan Ingram has, since he's come back for Jacksonville, he's just been dominant. So, but one of the things that remains the enigma about Philadelphia is that Philadelphia still hasn't scored in the first quarter of any game this entire year. So kind of an odd thing to do. Almost seems like it's worth a flyer to take Jacksonville in the first quarter, but it also seems very risky.
Okay. Up next, let's see, the last 4:05 game. 4-3 Chicago against 4-4 Arizona. Chicago coming off a loss to Washington 18-15 on the Hail Mary, and Arizona coming off a win over Miami 28-27.
Both those teams have been really good against the spread. Chicago 5-2 against the spread. Arizona 5-3 against the spread. So really interesting game. I think that people are down on Caleb Williams right now, and I am so not down on Caleb Williams. I think he's fantastic. I think he's just poorly coached. You saw the poor coaching. I mean, there's so many examples of how they were poorly coached. I mean, you come off a bye week, your very first, your clever play that you come in off a bye week is your backup center taking a handoff from at the goal line in a pivotal game, not one that's out of hand, but a pivotal go-ahead score, and you blow it. And he fumbles the ball. And I'm like, what are you doing? Just atrocious play calling by Shane Waldron. I just didn't get it. And of course, at this point, everybody's heard about Tyreek Stevenson. how not paying attention on the Hail Mary, he tipped the ball up to make matters worse. He was the guy that's supposed to be in the back screening out. Is it Noah Brown that ended up catching the ball? Was that the guy? I think it was for Washington. And so he was the guy that's supposed to be screening him out. Catch that? So, again, you can blame that on Tyreek Stevenson, but Tyreek Stevenson doesn't act that way in a Bill Belichick coach team. You just don't. And you're either coaching it or allowing it to happen. And to me, it's allowing it to happen in that case. I just didn't do it. I feel like that Caleb Williams, again, that was my big concern going into this year, is that you don't have that offensive coach or that guru to polish up the smooth edges with him and turn him into the quarterback he's going to be. You almost hope that the Giants get rid of Daboll and Daboll goes to Chicago because he will just absolutely light it on fire. At least that's what I do, because I think that's what he deserves. That kid's going to be brilliant. He's going to be amazing. I think Daniels probably wins Rookie of the Year this year, probably going away, but it's just environment and situation as long as he can stay healthy. Caleb Williams is going to be great, but, I can tell that you weren't this kid in class. Fortunately, I wasn't either, but, some kids had to repeat a grade in school back when we were younger. They don't do that anymore. They just pass them through. I feel like Caleb Williams is going to have to repeat first grade again in the NFL because he's going to have to redo his rookie year and actually be coached well and do that. And I think you're going to see Chicago blossom depending if they can make the right coach for him in the future and not get another defensive coach. So enough of that for me. One other thing that's noted to point out, Kyler Murray against after beating consecutive not the Rams, but the Chargers, then beating the Dolphins, won his first back-to-back games in 3 years. So.
Okay. So where are you on Chicago, Arizona?
Sorry about that, dude. Got carried away. I'm going to take Arizona -3 and a total of 41.
Okay, you said 41 and opened 44. It's up to 44.5. You said Arizona 3. I said Arizona 2. It opened pick'em, still pick'em. Yeah, you don't see that happen very often.
Well, that's one of the first pick'ems we've had this entire year.
Yep.
Okay,
next one. First of the 425 games, Detroit 6-1 at Green Bay 6-2. Detroit coming off the win over Tennessee 52-14. Green Bay coming off the win over Jacksonville 30-27.
Game of the week, right?
Yeah.
The battle for the NFC North. Again, two teams combined have a record of 12-3. Should be a well of a game. 58 degrees, 68% chance of rain, southeast wind, 6 miles per hour. The only game in the 50s this entire week with a high probability of rain. So that's an interesting thing from a handicapping perspective to look into it. I've got this one, Detroit. I've got Detroit favored by 3.5, and I've got a total of 49.
Okay. Total, you said 49, open 47.5. It's up to 48.5, so you're right there. Number, you were better than me on this one. You said 3.5 on Detroit. I said 1.5. It opened 4. It's down to 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised. Look,
I
think that most people thought that Malik Willis is starting on Sunday, and that's where the line opened up. And there's some chance that Jordan Love, since his MRI of his, it was just a groin strain instead of anything else more severe. I think that's probably what's brought the number back down. But an interesting number. I still don't think we have a final decision yet as far as who's going to start. But should be an interesting game. Malik Willis looks to be one of the best backups. Credit to LaFleur. I mean, if Green Bay ends up winning this division, and getting the playoffs, what they've done with Malik Willis, after he was cast off by Tennessee, you got to look at LaFleur as potentially one of the Coach of the Year candidates.
Yeah, can't disagree.
Yeah. One interesting stat without going through all of them, but the last 5 games, Detroit has 24 TDs and only 20 incomplete passes. Jared Goff has hit on 83% of his passes in the past 5 games. That's the most accurate stretch in league history, overtaking Hall of Famer Peyton Manning's best 5-game span of 80.2% completion percentage in 2008. Look, again, I'll say it again. He is not mentioned in the top candidates for Player of the Year or MVP. It's always Josh Allen, it's Lamar, and it's Patrick Mahomes. And Jared Goff is an afterthought. This guy is lighting it up this year. He's having a fantastic year. It is just criminal that he is not being mentioned in that. So, just one of the things that I'll leave at that, but we can move on.
Okay. Last of the 425 games is LA Rams 3-4 at Seattle 4-4.
Yep.
Rams coming off a win over Minnesota 30-20, and Seattle coming off the loss to Buffalo 31-10.
Look, I call this my worst to first reverse game, in the fact that Rams have been last, Seattle has been first. I feel like these teams have the potential to flip. Seattle's kind of getting exposed after kind of a mediocre wins. Seattle's beaten Denver, New England, Miami, and Atlanta. Not exactly who you'd call, just exactly great teams. Kind of discussed Atlanta already. The Rams have beaten San Francisco, Las Vegas, and Minnesota. You just kind of feel like that the Rams are starting to come in their own, and these two teams might be ships passing in the night. This could be the official changing of the guard. We'll see how it works out. I've got this one. I've got Seattle -3 and a total of 45.
Okay. You said 45. It opened 48.5, and it's still there. You said Seattle 3. I said Seattle 4. It opened Seattle 1, and it's now LA -1.5.
Yeah, again, not surprised. I was kind of hoping Seattle would be favored more to what you and I were thinking, because I was going to hammer the Rams on this one. Like I said, I just kind of see these teams passing a little bit in the night. 1.5 gives me pause toward the Rams, especially on the road. But interesting to see how this goes. Any thoughts on this game?
If I'm going to bet this, I'll probably be on the dog on Seattle. I think they looked terrible last week. It was awful, and I just think that stays with people. So I think this number maybe will go up to 2, 2.5, maybe 3. And I'll probably be on Seattle if that's the case. I'll have to keep an eye on how the betting splits are, but I'm not disagreeing with you about the Rams. I just think Seattle looked so bad last week that I think a lot of people are going to just think that they're, they actually technically have a better record than the Rams right now. So being a dog at home seems a bit odd in that respect, but maybe the who they beat isn't as impressive as who the Rams have beaten. And of course, the Rams just beat Minnesota, so that's another recency bias thing that might be playing in that too.
Yeah. Well, Seattle's defense is getting healthy. Last 2 games, they've looked a lot better. That defensive line's getting back. I like them.
Did not look good last week.
No, they did not. The sides are the Rams are 2-5 against the spread. Seattle's 2-5-1 against the spread. Not really convincing over way. Both teams underperforming as far as the way the market sees them to begin with. I didn't cover the weather. This actually is our lowest temperature of the entire weekend. Temperature is 51 at kickoff. 35% chance of rain, winds southwest at 5 miles per hour.
Okay. Next one is Sunday night. Indianapolis 4-4 at Minnesota 5-2. Indy coming off the loss to Houston 23-20, and Minnesota coming off the loss to the Rams 30-20.
Yeah, but I kind of created this yesterday before the benching of Anthony Richardson, which was the big news today for Indianapolis. But my thought at this was, will either one of these teams make the playoffs? I know that's kind of odd to say with Minneapolis or Minnesota, the way they've actually started, but the loss of Christian Darrisaw is just massive. I mean, he's not their best player, but he may be their most important as their offensive tackle. Him going down was just a player they couldn't afford to lose. Really, really hurts them. Puts a lot on Sam Darnold. We'll see how Sam Darnold does without him, but that's certainly an influential deal. My guess on this one was it was before the Anthony Richardson. Let me readjust it now. I'm going to go Minnesota 4, and I'll put a total of 45.
Okay, total, you said 45, open 45.5, it's 46. You said Minnesota 4, I said 7, it opened 6, it's down to 5.5.
Okay.
I'm not sure that there's a big, I think I saw something on Twitter that said, I can't remember what it was calling attention to. Maybe it was them as a dog, like as a money line dog, that the odds didn't change at all when they announced that Flacco was playing. Richardson's not very good, but Flacco's not that great either. So that makes sense to me. I don't think there's
he is worlds better than Anthony Richardson.
Not according to betting markets. Nobody's really
that's a mistake because he is massively better. Just to compare the two, is that Joe Flacco has Anthony Richardson's completion percentage is a league worst 44.4%. Joe Flacco has completed 66% of his passes this year. It's a massive difference. It's a massive undervalue by the market. I certainly understand your point. Interesting enough, Minnesota 5-2 against the spread. Indianapolis, a sneaky best 7-1 against the spread.
Yep. Yeah, I've been on them a bunch this year. My biggest thing with Richardson is that he's not just the mobility in the pocket, but the ability to get downfield with the ball. Where Flacco's, if nobody's open, he's just toast. He can chuck it into the stands, and that's about it. But Richardson can get you some first downs in man coverage when everybody's back's turned, when he can break the containment. So I think that helps him a lot. He's definitely not as good of a passer. I agree with you on that.
No, he's not. But in fairness to him, and I know I've kind of talked bad about him, but in fairness to him, there were tons of drops by his receivers on Sunday versus Houston. So, and his passes weren't that off. I think the big thing to him was the optics, where he tapped out and just took off one play because he was tired.
Yeah.
You never see a quarterback do that. You lose respect in the locker room. You lose respect from everybody. That's a bad look. This kid needs to take advantage of every chance he gets a chance to play, because he may get to rest for a long time in a very short time.
That's a little bit petty, though, I think. I know you never see that happen, but it probably should happen sometimes.
Look, his completion percentage and his off-target percentage are historically bad. And I'm talking about, in 25 years of data, it's bad. I mean, his is Jamarcus Russell bad. So when you're talking about that, when you start bringing up names like Tim Tebow and Jamarcus Russell are actually ahead of him in completion percentage, that's not good. He's only 10 games in. To your point, it's premature. We're in a quick bake world now where, kids got to perform. But, man, you can accept some incompletions, but when your quarterback comes out and said he's tired, man, it's a bad look. It really is.
It's a bad look, but it's not the end of the world. It's one play, and if he could have gotten dinged up and gone out for a play, but he admitted that he was tired because he had run a lot in the previous couple plays, and he was gasping for air, and he just said, "You know what? I probably should take." one of the things I hate the most is when somebody's dinged up really bad and they gut it out and they go in there and they play a terrible game because their shoulders all banged up and they can't throw or whatever. And we always give them plaudits for being a brave warrior going out there. But if your backup is 90% as good as you and you take a play off or a game off because you're banged up, that's better for the team anyway. You can be the warrior and lose the game, or you can be the teammate and say, you know what, I need to step out right now and let this other guy come in and play for a sec or for a game. I think some of those like bravery metrics that we try to throw at quarterbacks and football players are a little bit overblown. Maybe he'd lose respect in the locker room, as you said. Maybe he did, but I don't think he should really. It is the first time I've ever seen that. I'll admit that, but if he was gassed for that play and he was just gasping for air in the huddle, I mean, he probably knew, geez, I don't have it this play, So I don't know. It's not that big of a deal to me. It's a second-year quarterback, and he'll probably take so much garbage for it that next time he has a broken leg, he'll try to play anyway.
Yeah, I'm with you though. Look, I think it's a bad look. Probably in the big scheme of things, not that big of a deal. The big deal is his completion percentage and his off-target percentage. Those have got to be fixed. The thoughts inside the league is that can Shane Steichen fix him? Because there's nobody in the league that doesn't think Shane Steichen is not a great coach. And again, Jalen Hurts' best year was under Shane Steichen. I think there was some thought that he could take him and become the next Jalen Hurts, run him like he did Jalen Hurts. Again, difference is this guy, Anthony Richardson, when he runs, he fumbles and he gets injured. Not like Jalen Hurts, and his off-target percentage and his incompletion are just really subpar would be a nice way of saying it. So like you, I think that the taking himself because he was tired could be a potential joke one day, but he's got to get the passing statistics turned around to even be an average quarterback at this point, and it's looking bad.
Okay, I don't disagree with that. His passing stats are pretty awful. Yeah, but he's covering. I guess that's a good thing.
Yes, and Joe Flacco's covering when he's been in.
True. Monday night, Tampa Bay 4-4 at Kansas City 7-0. Tampa coming off a loss to Atlanta 31-26. Kansas City coming off the win over Vegas 27-20.
Well, look, I mean, this is the perfect example. I mean, it's like, everybody's like, oh, Chris Godwin and Mike Evans are out, and what's Tampa Bay supposed to do? Look at Kansas City. Look at their injuries, that they've had, and yet all they do is win because it's a culture. It's from the top down. It's the Hunt family. It's Brett Veach at GM. It's Andy Reid. It's Patrick Mahomes. You've got that core four there that are in place, and that's why you have a winning organization. And despite all that, it's like, okay, whatever. We're going to win anyway, and that's what they do. This one, 63, a balmy 63 in Kansas City, but a highest chance of showers we got of all the games, 74% chance on Monday night. South winds 10 miles per hour. My guess on this was Kansas City 9.5 and a total of 45.
Hey, you said 45, open 44, up to 46. You got right in the middle there. You said Kansas City 9.5. I said 8. It came out 9, and it's still 9. The thing about Kansas City, though, is they're winning, and you're right, but they're not covering very well. I don't know what their covering record is, but I had Vegas last week on them, and they're winning somewhat narrowly in games where they're favored by a lot. So I think I'm probably going to be looking at Tampa Bay this week, almost certainly.
Yeah. Tampa Bay is 4 for 4 as far as against the spread. Kansas City is 4-3. So both about even, not really a clear favorite there. Kansas City covering a little bit more. Doesn't seem like it, but they actually are.
It doesn't feel that way.
Yeah, doesn't at all. But, I mean, they're just not covering. They're not dominant at all. Kind of an interesting game. One of the things that Patrick Mahomes I think this really sums up Patrick Mahomes. I think this will put things in context for you. It certainly did for me. Is that Patrick Mahomes on first and second downs, his QBR is mediocre to bad for this season. In first and second and third quarters, his passing rating is mediocre to bad in the NFL. However, on third downs and in fourth quarters, Patrick Mahomes' QBR and passer rating are in the top 3 in the NFL. It's like he is bored, just waiting on the playoffs. How does that sit with you?
It sits fine with me.
But that's what it seems like. He's just like, just get me the playoffs. Let me just win another one.
Because they're 7-0. It's not like they're 4-3.
Because it's like when the moment, some people are like the moment is too big for them. It's like the moment isn't big enough for Mahomes. It's like it's like these run the mill every Sunday games, like whatever. Let me get through it and not get injured. But when you need me on third down and when you need me in the fourth quarter, I'm going to just eat your lunch. And that's what he does. Whether it's by his legs or his arm, he makes a play. And I just thought that was super interesting when I looked at that.
I agree. Yeah. It tracks, doesn't it?
It really does. To me, at that point, I'm like, oh, okay. At that point, I'm like, I'm no longer worried about Kansas City. I don't think that they're any kind of I'm not worried about them anymore at all. It's just that Patrick Mahomes is bored. And I think that's what's going on, and that's it. Matt, I think we're done.
Love it. Well, a Mahomes-Brady debate to prolong the show would work for me, but I had a lot of fun listening in tonight. One thing on the Vikings, they just picked up Cam Robinson from Jacksonville to fill that left tackle hole with Darrisaw going down. So
massive. Again, thank you for sharing that. I see said RBJ or RJB just typed that in, said Minnesota traded as well. So give him props putting in there. I saw that sitting in the queue. Thanks for bringing that up as well of who they traded for. I mean, that's massive. Look, Jacksonville's clearly selling right now, as they should be. Minnesota, again, a team that's going all in. You see that happening. They've got a chance this year. That's a sign of a great organization. You see what's happening there. You see Minnesota. You see Buffalo. You see Kansas City. You see Baltimore. Those are A-plus organizations that are doing what they can to win and win now. It's awesome to see. I love that. I love the aggressiveness. Aggressiveness in life always wins. It's like going up and asking the girl out. Don't be the guy at the bar. It's like, I should have asked her. You go up and you ask her and you put it out there, freaking lay them on the table and just ask her out. And the same thing here. The teams are like, hey, we are contenders. We're going all in. Let's be aggressive. Let's make it happen. I love it. Anything else, Matt?
I got nothing else. Looking forward to the weekend. Should be a lot of fun. People are ready for another winning weekend, guys. So let's get it.
Yeah. This weekend, just give everybody a little bit of heads up. I will be posting some tickets this weekend, and I will be doing some live betting this weekend. So pretty excited. Smooth Andy, you pumped about this weekend?
Trying not to get too pumped because I'm
tempering yourself.
Got to get some good work done in the next couple of days to feel guilt-free when we go.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, guys. Hey, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for spending your Tuesday night with us. We know there's a World Series game on. We're grateful for your time. We know you have a choice, guys. If you haven't followed Smooth Andy on Smooth Andy 5 or on Twitter, you should. A great Twitter read. That's the only platform he's on. Of course, I'm an Uncle Phil's Locks across all platforms and on YouTube as well. Please find me there. I also do some additional content on there just for YouTube. Guys, thanks for tuning in. I really appreciate you. Let's have another week. We're going to crush it again this week, guys. As always, guys, let's roll.
Soundstripe. Soundstripe. stripe.